Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of reggae legend Toots Hibbert. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but the first thing I want to get at is I want to offer my condolences and prayers to the friends and family of Toots Hibbert if any of them do happen to see this video. First thing, I of course wasn't able to get a time of birth on him. I have his birth date and location. I have him at December 8th, 1942 in Maypen, Jamaica. I had to improvise and do a solar/sunrise chart for him, which I put the sun at the same point as the ascendant. And anyway, first thing I'm looking at in this chart, I'm going to talk about some transits, natal placements that may have been tied into the sad passing. But I want to talk about first that he has, based on the solar sunrise chart, he's got a lot of very strong plethora of Sagittarius energy, including the sun and the moon in Sagittarius, and it just shows. I mean, he's got the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and the Moon in Sagittarius based on the solar sunrise time. Now, if he was born like very late in the day, the Moon may have been in Capricorn. I'm not sure of that though, but it is very likely that it is in Sagittarius because the Moon, based on the solar sunrise time, it puts the Moon at 21 degrees Sagittarius. So anyway, but it shows me, I mean, if his moon is indeed in Sagittarius, it shows that the sun, the moon, the sun, which is the conscious, the moon, the unconscious, are very much, really tied in and with each other. The basic wants and emotional needs are synchronized, and that's being in Sagittarius. That's like really about expanding horizons and a lot of positive energy matters with the outdoors, expressing exuberance, enthusiasm, just being very optimistic and positive. And the thing about him is that he was, I mean, obviously he was a reggae legend. There was something on Wikipedia that stated something like that he was um, likely, or at least likely, responsible for as far as the name, the genesis of reggae. But that's something you want to confer and look at online. But anyway, first thing, looking at as far as natal placements and transits that may have been tied in to his passing. I mean, it stated that first off, when I looked online, it stated that he died peacefully, but it was on a CNN report that stated that at this time he was waiting on the results of coronavirus testing. So we don't know the full details of his death. It's speculation, but he may have died due to the coronavirus. I noticed looking at the transits in his chart, transit Neptune was not far from his fourth house cusp at this time, so that could be an indicator of the fourth house in astrology is the end of life. Neptune can be associated with diseases. Pisces can be about ones that can't be eradicated or cured. So it is very likely that he could have died from this because it does seem, a little bit, very coincident. Maybe it's too much of a coincidence, the fact that he was awaiting these tests, the results, the outcome of this coronavirus COVID-19 testing at the time of his passing. And also transit Neptune is also making a loose square to his natal sun, and that could be an indicator of weakness and reduced vitality. I mean, when you have transit Neptune, it's an adverse aspect to one's sun, Mars, or ascendant. It's more about at the time feeling more like, maybe fantasizing, daydreaming, feeling more lethargic as opposed to taking action, and it could have been a contributing factor to maybe some weakness he may have been going through at this time as well. Now, the thing about it too is he also in the solar sunrise chart he has Mars in Scorpio in the 12th house. Now Mars in Scorpio by itself can indicate Mars in the 12th house by itself can indicate the manifesting limitations in energy and vitality. And in Scorpio, it could be due to a virus. It may have been he may have very likely contracted the coronavirus. Now, another thing when I'm looking at too, I know it's generational, but he has Pluto in Leo, and that could manifest in a death where that's going to come out. That's going to gain a lot of notoriety, attention, and recognition. It falls in his eighth house of viruses. At this time, he also had transit Venus, very close proximity to his natal Pluto, so that's an indicator of dying peacefully. Transit Venus in the eighth house could do that, but the fact that it's hitting his Pluto, it's not surprising. This was a very tranquil and peaceful death. Now, another thing that I'm noticing too is that at this time of his passing, transit South Node was not far from his moon. And when you have the transit South Node, if it's getting ready, I mean, if it's making a conjunction, it's not even if it's not far from a conjunction in transit, the south node can reflect what we're going away from. And the moon in astrology can be about the soul. You're talking about, sadly, this may have reflected the passing of the soul, the leaving of the soul, and perhaps going on to a greater plane, leaving the mundane plane and going on to something greater. Obviously, in respect to people's religious beliefs out there, and the moon being in Sagittarius, based on the solar sunrise chart, and perhaps a soul that was very optimistic, exuberant, enthusiastic, being that incorrigible um, optimist, and somebody that is obviously very positive and buoyant, and one was maybe very jocular as well. And the thing too is another thing. What I'm looking at in his chart, he has the North Node in Leo, and falls in the ninth house of in the solar sunrise chart. The North Node in Leo, that could be an indicator of your future, where you're being directed toward in the latter part of life, doing something that's going to gain some kind of notoriety, attention, and recognition, being lauded and praised for what you're doing, something with entertainment field, and he has it in the ninth house of global communications. What I noticed too, though, is he has Chiron conjunct his north node as well, so there may have been some suffering that he may have had to deal with. I mean, there's a price for fame. There's always, no matter who you are and your celebrity status, you're generally going to be some kind of repercussions to some degree for being famous. And he may have had to deal with something that we weren't cognizant of, that wasn't reported, that he kept to himself, that he was dealing with in terms of his future going toward being famous and gaining notoriety and recognition. Now, another thing I'm looking at, he's got Saturn in Gemini, and it falls in the sixth house in the solar sunrise chart. Saturn in Gemini by itself can give some, Saturn can be about chronic debilitations and illnesses. He may have been dealing with something. Saturn being in Gemini, some issues, maybe restrictions or limitations with breathing, with the respiratory system, perhaps something with the arms, the hands, the shoulders. Uranus conjuncts this, but with Uranus making the conjunction to Saturn, keep in mind Saturn could also be about the career, and you have the fact that Uranus conjuncts it could be one that could be unorthodox, and it may have been something where he was actually considered maybe some innovator, a pioneer, on some to some degree, or on some level. Now, another thing too is having Taurus on the cusp of the sixth house in the solar sunrise chart can indicate work with music, with the arts, which can include music, and that is what he did. And that ruler of the sixth house is Venus, and that conjuncts the moon in Sagittarius. So it's not surprising that the work that he did was something that was going to gain him some kind of public recognition, as the moon can be associated with the public in astrology. Now, another thing I'm looking at is he also at this time, based on the solar sunrise chart, he has transit moon very close to the eighth house cusp. So it's not surprising that this is another indicator of a death that was public, and likely that it was a family member that had reported this, given that transit moon is in Cancer, and in the death that was what I would say introverted, so to speak. He may have been, um, in his home by himself at the time of the passing, or maybe it was surround, or maybe he had family members nearby at this time, given that the transit moon, is in Cancer. Now, another thing I'm looking at too in his chart, he has Jupiter. Speaking of Cancer, he has Jupiter in Cancer, and Jupiter, of course, in being in Cancer, is in its exaltation. And the fact is, it could indicate, I mean, Jupiter, when you have it well placed by sign or aspect or what have you, it can be an indicator of certain prosperity, which I'm sure he made a prodigious amount of money doing what he did. And being in Cancer, something that he was perhaps at home with. Uh, so anyway, it's really not much more I really could add. And as far as his passing goes, well, another thing, well, what I want to say is what I'm looking at is the fourth house cusp of the end of life. I was telling you before that he had transit Neptune not far from the fourth house cusp, but he also has Pisces on the cusp of the fourth house, and that could indicate or suggest that the end of life may be tied in with something Pisces related, such as the disease that can't be eradicated or cured. He also has one of the rulers of the fourth house of the end of life posited in the eighth house. And the eighth house in astrology can be associated with viruses. So it's telling me that I do believe he likely did pass away because of this coronavirus. But keep in mind, when number of people, they've died of COVID-19, but a lot of times they had some accompanying factors, and a lot of these people that have passed away to it were older people, and he was at the time, of his passing. I guess he, obviously older person born in 1942. I believe that would, and he was born December 8th, 1942. I believe that made him 77 when he passed away, sadly. So anyway, one more thing I'm looking at is that the ruler of his eighth house, okay, in the solar sunrise chart, he has the zodiac sign Cancer on it. The ruler of that is the moon, and that's posited in his first house of the solar sunrise chart. So could that be an indicator that a virus could have taken his life, his vitality, his energy, being given the fact that the ruler of the eighth house is in the first? I think it could manifest in that. But we're going to obviously find out more about his death as the story develops, and I'm sure maybe by tomorrow news reports will elaborate on how he passed away. Maybe they just haven't really been able to ascertain. The doctors haven't been able to ascertain that yet. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.